Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Rajeshkumar. Today, we are going to analyze one problem question on tort law about the psychiatric injury in negligence. The video content has been made available for informational and educational purpose only. Kindly go through this slide completely. Let's start with the problem question. Abraham attends the Brooklyn Hospital, which is managed by Brooklyn NHS Trust for the routine facial surgery. Due to the negligence of the surgeon, Mr. Young, Abraham suffers severe complications which resulted in disfiguration of his face as well as requiring him to be placed temporarily in an induced coma. The day following the operation, his brother Ezra arrives to visit him and is appalled to see the state of Abraham is in. Sarah, Abraham's wife, was working abroad at the time of operation. She rushes to the hospital 2 days after the surgery when Abraham is still in intensive care. Abraham remains in hospital for 3 weeks and then returns home for 6 month rehabilitation and recovery. Abraham becomes depressed during his long convalescence. Ezra develops a pathological fear of hospitals and refuses to accept his own badly needed medical treatments. Sarah develops insomnia and cannot face returning to work. You have to advise Abraham, Sarah, and Ezra. Let's analyze each and every category. In advising Abraham, Sarah, and Ezra on potential claims arising from Abraham's surgery complications and the resulting psychological impact, we examine both the fundamental of negligence, that is, duty, breach, causation, and the psychiatric injury. The claim involves different parties, with Abraham being the primary victim and Sarah and Ezra are the secondary victims under the common law principles. What about the Abraham's claim? He is a primary victim. Abraham, who suffered a physical injury due to the surgeon's negligence, can rely on Page versus Smith case for the primary victim experiencing the psychiatric harm. Under the Page versus Smith, a claimant is not required to foresee a psychiatric injury, specifically if the physical harm is foreseeable and occurs due to the defendant's negligence. Here, Brooklyn NHS Trust, as Abraham's healthcare provider, owes a duty to avoid forcible harm. The NHS Trust represented Mr. Young had a duty to perform the surgery with a reasonable care. The negligence in performing the surgery caused Abraham's injuries, leading to physical disfiguration, a coma, and a prolonged recovery period. Abraham's physical injury and subsequent psychological effects, such as depression, are directly linked to the breach. Therefore, he likely has a valid claim for both physical and psychiatric harm. As a patient, Abraham is a primary victim to whom Brooklyn NHS Trust owed a duty of care. In other words, Page versus Smith confirms that primary victims are entitled to claim for both physical and psychiatric injuries arising from the negligent act. Here, the surgeon negligence lead to severe complications, including disfiguration and induced coma. Abraham depression during his recovery falls within the category of recognized psychiatric harm, given that depression was a foreseeable consequence of his disfiguration and the prolonged recovery. He has a strong claim for a psychiatric injury as it is consequential to the physical harm he sustained. As in Page versus Smith, the primary victims do not need to prove that the psychiatric harm was foreseeable separately from the physical harm, making Abraham's case for both types of injuries straightforward. What is the remedy? Abraham can likely recover damages for both physical disfigurement and psychiatric harm, including his depression and any cost associated with extended rehabilitation and recovery. Let's move on to Sarah and Ezra case. Sarah and Ezra may seek compensation for psychiatric harm as secondary victims governed by Alcock versus Chief Constable of South Yorkshire Principle. Alcock established the control mechanism requiring that The secondary victim must have a close relationship with the primary victim. They are directly perceive the traumatic event or its immediate aftermath. And the third one is experience a sudden shock. And the final one, suffer a medically recognized psychiatric illness. Ezra arrived the day after the Abraham surgery and experienced the shock at Abraham State. However, in Liverpool Women Hospital and Rowan, the court ruled that encountering a loved one in a distressing condition at the hospital does not necessarily meet the threshold for a sudden shock, even if it is a part of the series of events. As Abraham's brother Ezra qualifies under the close ties criteria, given that Ezra visited the hospital a day after the surgery, his experience may lack the immediacy required by the Alcock. The court in Ranine and Sion versus Hampstead case determined that the gradual realization of the loved one suffering rather than a sudden shock does not fulfill the criteria. Ezra's pathological fear of hospital could qualify as an actionable harm if diagnosed. Yet, without satisfying the shock requirement, his claim may face challenges. Ezra's relationship with Abraham as a brother may satisfy the close tie requirement, though the court typically scrutinize a siblings' claim more than those involving parents, children, or spouses. The onus would be on Ezra to demonstrate a particularly close relationship. Ezra arrived a day after Abraham's surgery, meaning he did not witness the negligence act itself, but saw Abraham's deteriorated the state afterwards. In Liverpool Women's Hospital, NHS Foundation Trust versus Ronan 2015 emphasized that witnessing a family member in a traumatic medical condition does not automatically qualify as proximity if the injury was not sudden or unexpected. As Ezra shock stemmed from seeing Abraham's post surgery rather than witnessing the event itself. This requirement may be challenging to meet. Courts generally require a sudden appreciation of horrifying event, as in Sion versus Hampstead Health Authority, where a prolonged period of distress did not qualify. Since Ezra saw Abraham after the surgery, he may not satisfy this requirement because his distress arose from observing the aftermath rather than the immediate shock inducing the event. So, what's the outcome? Ezra's claim for psychiatric injury may face challenges, particularly with proximity and the sudden shock criteria, making it unlikely to succeed. What about Sarah's claim? She is the second victim. The Sarah response upon seeing Abraham in intensive care also raises the issue. In Walters versus North Glamorgan NHS Trust case, the court accepted a claim where the mother witnessed a 36 hours of traumatic event resulting in her child death, as the experience was deemed uninterrupted and horrifying. Sarah, as Abraham's wife, qualifies for the close relationship. The proximity and shock that Sarah saw Abraham 2 days after the surgery, which might fail the immediacy and sudden shock requirement in Alcock. However, if she perceives the trauma as a single distressing episode, it may support her claim as in Walters. What is the medically recognized condition? Sarah's insomnia and the inability to work could establish actionable psychiatric harm if diagnosed. In other words, the Soros claim would also be analyzed under the Alka criteria as the Abraham wife. She meets the close tie of love and affection requirement. However, as with Ezra, the timing of her arrival complicates the remaining criteria. Sarah, as the Abraham spouse, clearly satisfied the requirement of close tie of love and affection. The Sarah arrived 2 days after the operation. The court in Ronan was reluctant to allow a claim when distress arose from witnessing the condition of a loved one rather than observing the shocking event or its immediate aftermath. Sarah's inability to witness the surgery or its direct aftermath undermine her proximity claim. Usually, the court looks for a sudden traumatic realization of the harm, as in Walter versus North Glamorgan NHS Trust in a case in 2002, where a mother's claim was upheld because she experienced her child deteriorating conditions as part of the continuous traumatic event. Shara's experience may lack the sudden shock element as her distress resulted from seeing Abraham in intensive care rather than witnessing the negligent act or a shocking event. The Soros claim is also unlikely to succeed due to the limitations in satisfying the proximity and the sudden shocking requirement for secondary victims. What are the additional consideration for all the claims? All the claims on establishing the Brooklyn NHS Trust liability for initial negligence, which appears clear due to the acknowledged failure of the surgeon. The rigid requirement for secondary victims often results in unsuccessful claims. Both Ezra and Sarah cases are weakened by the timing of their experience, as the courts have generally denied claims based on witnessing the prolonged suffering of a loved one rather than a sudden shocking event. For psychiatric injury claims, the medical evidence of recognized condition is crucial. Both Ezra's fear of hospital and Sarah's insomnia may require substantial evidence to demonstrate the causation, especially since the law does not compensate for the general grief or upset. To conclude, Abraham has a strong case for the physical and psychiatric injuries. As a primary victim, he is likely to succeed in the claim. Damages for disfigurement, depression, and the cost associated with his long recovery. What about Ezra? She will likely face difficulties with his psychiatric injury claim due to the challenges in establishing the proximity and the sudden shock. His claim is unlikely to succeed. What about Shara? Similarly, Shara's claim is weak due to the lack of proximity to the immediate aftermath and the absence of the sudden shock element. Like Ezra, her claim is likely to be unsuccessful. In summary, while Abraham's case is strong, both Ezra and Shara's claim for psychiatric injury as secondary victims are likely to be unsuccessful under the strict requirement established by Alcock and related cases. Thank you.